Okay, goody good. We can begin with the recap. Thanks everyone for the amazing intros. So with over 2.5 billion, let's say global active devices, Android continues to be a platform that's innovative, and we want to build it for everyone. So it's the amazing developers like you that build apps that impact people's day-to-day life, and we always want to witness the great apps that you have been developing. So thank you very much for building all those apps. So for this ADS, our priority in Android team was to increase your productivity and also witness your amazing creativity that you do to meet the user requirements. So we had three themes this year. I think we've split it across the US, London, and Japan. So we had kind of three sessions for ADS, but it was themed around MAD, multi-device, and the platform updates. So for modern Android development, we saw users' demands have been growing. I mean, they expect rich, delightful, and dynamic apps, and we want to help to shoulder most of the boilerplate codes that you will be writing and create the building blocks that you can use to build the amazing apps. Second, we had form factor. So we are seeing people owning and using multiple Android devices, phones, tablets, and they expect the apps to work the same way across devices. So imagine a use case, you're browsing internet on your phone, you want to see it on a bigger picture or bigger screen, you copy a URL, and guess what, you just go and paste it in your tablet, and you can continue browsing. So want to achieve those kind of experiences with multi-device world. And last but not the least, we had platform updates. So we are evolving the Android platform to meet the user demands, so like privacy, security, and personalization. And the tough job, as you do, we try to balance between the user needs and the developer needs. So users demand for privacy, which means we have permissions, and permissions meaning developer need to take care of asking for them. So this becomes a little bit, let's say, challenging task to ensure what users want and what developer wants, but we strive to ensure both sides get it balanced. So a few years ago, we introduced a set of libraries, tools, and guidance, and we called it Modern Android Development, MAD. And our goal is to make it faster and easier for you to build the high-quality apps. And that's why we brought to you the Android Studio, Kotlin, many Jetpack libraries, the material design, and the Play updates. And all of it is also available through Play Store, and we want to support multi-devices so that you build apps that work better together. We want the skills you learn to be applied, let's say, across the Android ecosystem of devices. So, for example, we believe Jetpack Compose is the best way to build rich and beautiful UI. So glad to see many of you are already trying Compose, and we are here also to hear in case you have any issues or after the sessions, or we have been to answer Q&A, feel free to ask those questions. But Compose already lets you ship delightful user experience on phones and tablets, and earlier this year, we also released Compose 1.0 for Wear OS, and making the Compose recommended way to build the wearable UI. So later, Katie will be sharing more on those aspects. And Compose has also now published the alpha version for Android TV. So if you're building for Android TV, it's already available in alpha version for you to try it out. That's not it. So we saw over 160 of top 1K app on Play Store are already shipping Compose. So that's like a 50% increase compared to last year that we saw in Google I earlier in the last year, and many people are moving towards it. But we're not done yet. So far we have released, let's say, all Compose libraries since 1.0 a year ago. but we wanted to give more flexibility so that the different Compose libraries can move at, let's say, their own space. So we started to do the versioning of each Compose library. But then you might need to specify the, let's say, the version of each libraries, maintain it, check which one is compatible and not, and so on, if we do that. To simplify those processes, we introduced something called Bill of Materials, and we call it BOM. So it specifies the latest stable version for each Compose library. So adding it as a dependency doesn't mean you'll get all the libraries in your apps. You still need to pick up, but you don't have to specify the relative versions of each of the library. And our first BOM, we call it as Compose October 2022 release, brings many features like lazy staggered grids, the lazy column layouts. I think the most demanding was pull to refresh, although we support it in the library Accompanies, which is maintained by Google Earth, but we have pulled it up to Compose itself. And lots of performance improvements along with these features. So, for example, in this release, we started, let's say, a major refactor to the modifier system. And we have been able to introduce this without touching any public APIs. So the layering and the abstraction that Compose brings up is built upon, helps us to keep improving all those aspects of performance for your Compose apps. And now we are focused on making Compose highly performant out of the box so that the apps that you build are kind of buttery smooth and provides a great user experience to your users. So a year ago, we also introduced Material U with Android 12, which is Google's most expressive and flexible design system. And now Material 3 components for Compose are stable. So you can start using them to build the beautiful apps with the rich UI and so on. And of course, Jetpack is much more than Compose. We released Benchmark 1.1 that helps you to monitor apps startup and runtime performance with the usage of macro benchmarks. We also released Benchmark 1.2 Alpha that introduces the ability to, let's say, measure the power usage and detail composition timings in your Compose. So would highly recommend to try it out and see what's the power usage of for your apps or particular screens and so on. Not only this, the Fragment 1.4 brings a new strict mode to automatically catch most of the common issues. And we added activity, so Squama should be 1.6, that adds supports for predictive back layout. I saw some of you implemented the apps with it, and if your app already uses the Jetpack fragment and navigation libraries, that support is completely automatic, and you can just upgrade it. And we also believe the best performance improvements are the one you get it for free. So with baseline profiles, it's a powerful way to improve your startup and runtime performance, and without changing a single line of code. So you just need to write, let's say, for your critical user journeys, you create a baseline profile and see how it impacts your startup. But most of the time, you don't really have to do anything. The Compose library ships with a baseline profile, and which is kind of gives all this performance benefit out of the box. And but in some cases, you may want to create it for your critical user journeys. So would highly recommend to try it out and use macro benchmarks to measure the performance aspects. And finally, we know that the building an app is just more than writing code. So we announced App Quality Insights earlier this year. And this new feature is available in the latest version of Android Studio. You can do things like see the crash reports from the field, navigate to, let's say, the code directly by clicking on the different aspects here itself, and it's all within Android Studio. It's available in beta channel, and the app quality insights goes further. So it can help you communicate the status of the issues with, let's say, rest of your team, or you can filter issues by, let's say, the play track, and also identify the ones that requires action. And by adding a note directly from the IDE, you can let your team know that, hey, I've been working on fixing this issue, just to help you better communicate along with your team. And just last year, we also launched Wear OS 3 platform together with Samsung. And this year's, there are like 3 times as many device activations. So we have seen like new devices from Samsung, Montblanc, Fossil Group, Mobvoi, and all are powered by OS 3. And earlier this month, we also at Google we also launched our Pixel Watch, which is our first ever smartwatch that brings the best of Fitbit and many of the. I hope you are using many of the Google apps. So it's just all of the apps at the power of your wrist. Now, all this progress has resulted in really excited opportunities for your apps. So wearables bring something really unique to Android. So there are sensors like heart rate, payments, notifications, and all available on your wrist. So making most of the different wearable surface, I need to go quickly because later Katie will be covering most of it. So you can create different wearable surfaces and increase user engagement across all the devices. And sometimes you will create a full app, but you might want something as simple as a tile on Wear OS. So we collected all the personal data from the sensors in your Wear app. And now we want to record and analyze it over the time. But just remember, all this data is stored on the user's phone. It's not on the OS itself, and it never leaves the device. And it's completely private and safe on the device. And you can try to make use of all those features. And we have made it easier by exposing the Health Connect APIs. So in case you want to interact with them, of course, you need to get proper permissions, and if you have the permissions, you can make most of it. This is not it. We're also continuing our big changes to help app expand large screens, like foldables, tablets, and Chrome OS. And these devices are driving a generational hardware shift, so changing the way users interact with the Android apps on any screen size. We also have, let's say, different code labs that focus on adaptive layouts and how you can use Compose to build amazing apps just by handling the different screen size. Do remember that try not to get the width of your screens, instead rely on the Windows API that we have, because now with tablets, you can basically launch or use apps in a split mode screen. So just getting the width and then making your composables doing it won't be a great experience. So remember to use the Windows API to adjust your width and the display of the apps accordingly. And now we are getting really excited. Earlier this month, we showed a preview of, let's say, the upcoming Pixel tablet, which will be arriving in 2023. And we bring the best of Android and Pixel together in a tablet. So whether you're working on an existing multi-activity based application or building a new app with Compose, we are working to make updating layout, let's say, less work. And we release new APIs like activity embedding, the window size classes that I was talking about, the Jetpack Compose support, and make it easier to build the app responsively. And speaking of, let's say, Jetpack Compose, as you explore updating your app, we are making it easy for you to see how your app works, even if you don't have the device. So with Gradle managed device, with Firebase Test Lab support and Compose multi-preview, Android Studio helps you to improve your development journey. I do recommend to try the Gradle managed device, especially it has the features like test sharding, meaning you can have your test suite running on multiple emulators at the same time. So which means you get the faster UI tests with it. So, and also it helps you to, let's say, control the memory on the phones, on the emulators by giving you the control on choosing which apps are pre-installed on emulator. So do try out Gradle managed device, and even if their tests are running in parallel, you still get the results as you would actually get if you're running on single emulator. Of course, it depends on the configuration. So if you, I have seen at least 2 or 3 working emulators working in parallel and executing tests properly. But yeah, if the configuration is low, maybe you can try out just with 2 emulators. And with updates like taskbar, activity embedding, and compatibility mode, Android 13 also delivers even better experience on tablets. But there is just more with enhancement to personalization, your privacy, security, and we put user in focus and try to understand what would a user want from a phone. And all of these security improvements and everything is centralized based on how user feels secure while using phone, and eventually how they feel about using an app, your apps. So imagine the people are using the app and you are requesting, let's say, permission that your apps maybe not need, like for a navigation app, you are requesting for telephony to read IMEI numbers and so on. So we need to ensure that this is all balanced, and Android 13 takes a step further to ensure those privacy aspects. And the world is multilingual, with people often communicating in different languages and in different contexts. With Android 13, we have introduced this per app language feature, so that improves the experience for multilingual users. So it's very simple to enable this per app language preference. So it basically involves a local config XML and that you can specify in the Android manifest. And also Android 13 users get the settings in the consistent and discoverable phase. So building custom in-app language features that actually synchronizes with your Android 13 settings. Next, we had the photo picker. So if your app needs to get, let's say, a selection of user images, like choosing a profile picture, or let's say you want to share something on social media and so on in your app, you can use the new photo picker APIs. So using this, it's a privacy-friendly way to allow only the selected photos and videos that your app can explicitly share. And in upcoming months, the photo picker will also include media that the user you can fetch it from the cloud as well. So do try out the photo pickers if you're dealing with profile images and so on. Then we had something called SDK extension. So I think we mentioned a photo picker is available since Android 13, but actually to make it backward compatible up to Android 11, we are using something called SDK extension. And it's a technology that uses the Google system updates with the modular system components, and it can be backward compatible to, let's say, Android 11 as well. So do check out the SDK extensions that are there. We also introduced notification permission to give easy control over which apps can send notifications. So one more notification for you to, for one more permission for you to handle. But as we mentioned, we are putting user in the center, and we heard lots of feedback from the users about how apps are actually using notifications and so on. So regardless of what API you are targeting, remember to check out for the notification permissions. targeting Android 13 actually allows you to improve even better user experience, and it gives control over when the permission request happens, and you can have the ability to provide a context. And on top of it, you can have a chance to requery the user. So to help the target new API levels, we also introduced something called Android SDK Upgrade Assistant. It's available within the Android Studio. Well, that's more or less highlights from the announcement that we did for Android Dev Summit, and we have many talks and guidelines. I think we also have talks from Ben, speaking on states and all the performance aspects and so on. So do check out all the videos for those of you haven't had a chance to take a look. And we also have a MAD track, and I think all the tracks are by now completed, and you should be able to have all those videos in form of playlist, or some of you just prefer to watch everything. Do check it out on the YouTube channel. Well, that's more or less. I wanted to give a quick preview on ADS recap, and hopefully you guys can go out and try all those new APIs. Thank you. We have Q&A later from Ben, so if you want to talk about, let's say, discuss on, I do work on, I mostly work on cross, we call it as product areas, but while I'm building for some training content, I do work with Compose team for creating the code labs for basics and so on. So if you want to discuss about any issues or and so on, of course, Ben is here. You can feel free to approach me, and I'll help to get the clarifications for you. So that's it. Huh? Yeah, any questions? Yes.
Hi. If I run my app on an Android 13 emulator, I get a prompt for permissions for notifications. But if I run it on a device, an Android 13 device, I don't get the same prompt. Do you have any insight into why there's that difference?
What is the prompt you get?
For the push notification permission. So on an emulator, I see that prompt as soon as the app opens. But on a device, I do not see it.
And in both cases, you're fresh installing the app, or?
Yes, so yeah.
Okay, that's strange. Maybe I'll take it as an issue and check with it. Normally, if you have installed it previously and you reinstall and you get the permission before, it may not prompt, but if you're sure that it's fresh install, I think that's the issue. But are you targeting Android 13 in your manifest?
Yeah, previously we were not. So we were concerned that users on Android 13 were seeing a prompt when they open the app to push notifications. So we actually targeted Android 13 purely to make sure that users didn't see that, but we weren't sure if that was the intention.
No, I think one thing, as I was mentioning, the prompt that I was discussing for notification is not dependent on whether you target Android 13 or not. It will be, regardless of whether you target or not, users should be seeing it. But if you're not able to view it, I think that's an issue that I need to follow up. Yes, I'll get back to you. Maybe I'll ask in our internal channel and see why the notification is not appearing.
Just a comment. I think you need more support for migrating legacy apps over to Compose, because it took me 3 days to get great ability to work.
Oh wow! Okay, that's that's painful. So sorry for your experience. What was the painful point? Was it?
If you just create a new Compose thing, that works fine. But my existing project, which is now my I'm using Firebase, I'm using like game services, and I'm using GameMob, and a whole bunch of things. Getting all that to work with Kotlin, it was just doing my head in.
Okay, maybe after I'll.
But just one question. Can I? So now I've kind of got Kotlin working and my old code working. Can I just mix and match and call one activity from another? That's fine.
Yeah. So Compose is designed for interoperability. So whether you are calling views in Compose or Compose in views, we support either way. And on top of it, just now I was sharing, we also support the binding stuff. So you can do it in both
It
ways.
makes you happy that my effort was worth it.
Yay! But would like to.
Like some things are happening by Android Studio automatically. Some things don't happen. You have to like. I advise anyone doing it. Don't create a compose, empty project, and have a look what it does for the project level, module level, build Gradle, and then try and line by line compare what you're doing, try and fix it, resolve any conflicts. Eventually, you get there.
No, but I think that's a painful experience that maybe I'll follow up with you after the session to understand more. And in case there is an issue.
My build file, because if it helps other people.
Okay, no, thanks for sharing. Let me collect this and I'll discuss internally with the team, and hopefully you guys don't have to do the same thing that you had to go through. So sorry for your experience, but let's see how we can improve that.